Hello and welcome to Wheat Beat. Today we're going to be making the Fraisier cake, which is a really beautiful cake as you can see. It's got a chiffon cake layers with creme mousseline in the middle and strawberries topped with a marzipan. It actually has real vanilla beans inside, as you can probably see here. And although it looks complicated, it's actually a very easy cake to make. I'm going to walk you through the steps and you'll be able to make it at home yourself. Let's get started. In here with canola oil, water, vanilla, and lemon juice. And then in a smaller bowl I have cake flour, baking powder, and sugar. This is the cake flour I use. It's definitely recommended to use this as opposed to all-purpose flour because otherwise the cake will come out a little bit more firm and less pleasant in texture. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is whip the egg whites, the sugar, and the cream of tartar into medium peaks. And that is about medium peaks. They're kind of falls over like that. Doesn't stay completely stiff, but it does have stiffness to it. So that would be medium peaks. That's pretty good for the egg whites. All right, I'm preheating my oven to 330 and I've gotten a 6-inch cake pan with a parchment paper liner. Notice I'm not going to pre-grease this at all because this is a foam-based cake, and when you use a foam-based cake, foam being the egg whites that are whipped, you don't want to use any lubrication here on the side because you want the foam to basically rise up on the walls here and stick to the walls. If you were doing a fat-based cake, then you would line this with a little bit of grease so that it wouldn't resist the rise. But with a foam-based cake, no grease. Okay, now we're going to sift in the dry ingredients into the wet, and we're not going to agitate this too much, just enough to mix it thoroughly without any lumps. All right, now we're going to take those the whipped egg whites and we're going to whip them in 1/3 at a time. So I'm just mixing them together like this. And then when I get most of it in there, then I'll just add a little bit more. And then I'll put in the last third. And when you do the final mix here, you want to make sure that it's mixed in really well. There's no streaks left in there at all. Okay, looks pretty good. I'm going to pour in 265 grams into this 6-inch cake pan here. You don't want to go too much more than that, even if you have extra, or it will overflow the pan. Tap it a little bit, make sure it's level, and then this will go in the oven, 330 degrees for about 40 minutes. Okay, so we've taken our cake out of the oven, and that's looking perfect. Nothing broken on the top, and you don't have a volcano going there in the middle. So we're going to actually put this on a paper towel on a cooling rack like that, inverted, and we're going to let that cool most of the way before we depan it. The cake is cool now, and we're going to go ahead and remove it from the pan. Not too bad. I'm just going to leave it like that, and then we're going to finish the creme mousseline. We're now moving on to making the vanilla creme mousseline. We're going to start here with a 2-quart pot that has the milk and sugar, and then I'm going to add the vanilla bean to it in just a second. I also have this 3 egg yolks, 20 grams of cornstarch, and the 40 grams of sugar. And you can actually just go ahead and mix these together right now is fine. And it just makes like a little bit, like a little paste like this. And you don't want to incorporate too much air, just like that. Okay, now we're going to get the vanilla bean opened up. So what you do is you just run a little slit over the top of it like that. I'm not going all the way through, just enough to slit the top. And then you can kind of open it up. And then what you do is you can just, once it's open, you can just scrape your knife across it like this. Same thing on the other side here. And then you have all the vanilla seeds in here that you've collected. Now I just go ahead and throw the whole thing in here, including the pod, and then I'll sift all that out later. But everything goes in there like that, and then this will go ahead and start getting boiled. Now I'm just breaking up the vanilla bean pieces in here so that it releases all the little tiny seeds inside. If you don't have a vanilla bean, which they're sometimes difficult to find and they can be very expensive, you can of course just substitute it with vanilla extract. It won't look exactly the same and the taste won't be as distinctive, but I think you'll get the majority of the flavor that you're looking for. I would probably start with a teaspoon, maybe teaspoon and a half of vanilla extract if you don't have a pod like this. But if you do, the pod is the way to go. Okay, so it's just about boiling here. It doesn't have to be exactly boiling. But now I'm going to go ahead and sift out all the remnants there. Just kind of put that in there. Alright, and I'm going to wash this pot real quick so that there's nothing left inside here. Okay, there we go. It's nice and clean now. And then I'm going to just take out what I sifted from here and then just pour that back in to continue boiling. And now we still have all the tiny little vanilla seeds in there, and so I'm going to let this boil just a little bit better here, and then we're going to temper this into the egg mixture. Okay, it's now boiling here again, so I'm going to go back over to the egg mixture here, and I'm going to go ahead and pour a little bit in here like that, and then I'm going to just mix that together, and then I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more, and this is tempering the eggs here so that they don't cook and they get diluted. It doesn't become scrambled eggs when you add it to the boiling milk. And now we're going to add this back to the boiling milk. Like that. And now we're going to cook this for about 2 minutes. Once it starts to boil again, we'll let it boil for about 2 minutes. And what you're going to see here pretty quickly is that this is going to start to get more like a custard once it boils again. So you can already see it's starting to get a little bit thicker here. And it's very important to mix this very thoroughly while it's doing this, otherwise it will get very clumpy. And you can probably turn the heat down here a little bit now. We don't want anything to burn. But you can clearly see it's starting to look like a custard now. And I'm using a silicone spatula because I can get into the corners a lot better than if I used a whisk. But I'm just mixing this very, very thoroughly as it's cooking. Okay, it's been 2 minutes now, and I'm going to just go ahead and turn off the heat. And I am going to put in room temperature butter, a stick of room temperature butter. So I'll just put that in there like that. Nice and healthy. And I'm going to keep mixing that, and the heat is off at this point. Okay, I put it on the counter now, and I'm just mixing in the butter a little bit more. And then we're going to let this get to about room temperature, and then we're going to add a little bit more butter. We're going to whip in a little more butter in the KitchenAid, but we're going to let this get to room temperature first. Now to make the mousseline cream, I'm going to put in the custard. Now I'm going to add the rest of the butter, which is another 87 grams, and then this we will whip in the KitchenAid mixer. And we're going to whip this until it's soft and creamy. And I'm just going to scrape it down here a little bit. And then keep going. Okay, we're all done here. It looks pretty runny, but it's actually not. Once this cools off in the refrigerator, this will actually become fairly firm. So this is fine. Now we're going to go ahead and split the cake and get started on the strawberries. Okay, here I have I have about 15 strawberries. You may need more or less, and I've also cored them. So I'm going to start by cutting them in half, and I'm also making sure that they're staying upright. If they're not cut flat, then they're going to be tipped, and that is going to change the look of the cake later. So you just want to make sure you're cutting everything straight. And I'm not going to cut them all in half, just a few. And then we're going to use this when we do the assembly of the cake. So we're going to go to that next. Okay, next thing we're going to do is split the cake in half. For many of these cakes, you actually don't need to split it in half, actually into thirds. So it's a little less cakey, but I actually like this cake a lot, and so I'm going to use the entire 6-inch cake and then just split it in half. So if you don't have a turntable like this, you can still do it by hand. This just makes things a little bit easier. You score all the way around, and then you kind of start going in a little bit deeper, and this assures you a more even layer. Okay, like that. So now we have the 2 cake halves, and then we'll go ahead and start assembling things. So now for the fun part, we're going to put a 6-inch corrugated cardboard base, and then this is what makes the Fraisier special, is you need a 6-inch ring like this in order to assemble it correctly. So we're going to put this on here, and then we have some cellophane that we're going to place inside that, like this. Now it's okay if it doesn't fit in, stay in perfectly, because as soon as you put in one layer of your cake, like this, it will hold it in well. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the strawberries. So we've cut some of them in half, and now I'm going to take the cut strawberries, and I'm going to place them along the edge of the cake like that. It's probably a good idea to try to pick strawberries that are around the same size. Like this one's a little bit small, so I'm going to use a different one so they're about the same height. Okay, so now you have strawberries all the way around the edge like that. Now we're going to fill the inside with more whole strawberries. You don't have to cut these, and you can just place them right in there. Okay, and let me just go ahead and put the rest of these strawberries in here. So there we go. And now what we're going to do is fill all this in with cream. I've taken the custard and I put it in a pastry bag, and now I'm just going to go ahead and start to fill in all the nooks and crannies around here, around the strawberries, with the cream. And I'm going to leave just a little bit of the cream for later. And right now I'm just going to flatten this out a little bit here. Okay, that's that. Now we're going to go ahead and put the top layer of the cake on. So we're just going to squeeze that on there like so. And just trying to look at it, make sure everything's nice and flat. It's not all bumpy there. That looks pretty good. Right now this cake goes back in the refrigerator for 1 hour for things to firm up a little bit before we do the final step, which is to cover the top with the marzipan. Okay, so the cake's been in the refrigerator for about an hour or so, and now the mousseline cream is firmed up, so we can take this off the ring, and then the acetate cake collar, the plastic cake collar here is still on. So I'm going to go ahead and peel that off now, like that. And that's beautiful. So we have the strawberries and the cream in there, and that looks really, really good. So now we're just going to finish this by putting a colored marzipan on top, but you can do anything you want. And then that will finish the cake. Now this is the marzipan that I use. It's also called almond candy dough. And so we'll take that out and use it. You really don't need very much marzipan. You need about 100 grams. So I'm going to weigh out 100 grams and then I'll mix it with a little bit of coloring. Traditionally, the marzipan is mixed with green. That's for Fraisier, but you can obviously use any color you want. And then when I'm done, I end up with this green disc here. I'm just going to flatten it out and put it in the refrigerator. It's a lot easier to work with marzipan when it's cold. So I'm going to leave it in there for about a half an hour, and then I'll come back and we'll roll this out into a disc that will cover the cake. Okay, we're ready now to finish. So I'm just going to spread a little bit of the creme mousseline here. And I'm just going to spread that over the top. And this is just so that the marzipan sticks a little bit better here. So now we're going to take the marzipan and lay it over the top. And just wipe the top so that it becomes a little bit shinier. And there you have it, a Fraisier. That's it for now.